inviting you to join us on Talk What You Know, Hard Talk, the new edition, where you become the expert. The barber, the beautician, the beauty shop, those are the people we're going to talk to, the grassroots people, the people in the community who really knows what's going on. You know, the street knows what's happening before anybody else. So we encourage you to join us each and every Wednesday at 11 a.m. on Talk What You Know, Hard Talk, on NewOrleansTalkNetwork.com, where you become the expert, where we explore politics, business, ecclesiastical issues, and everything that impacts you on a daily basis. We encourage you to join us every Wednesday at 11 a.m., where we bring you exciting people from the community, talking what you know, hard talk, no holds barred, where you become the expert.
Here at Jones Insurance, your full-service agency, let us take care of all your insurance needs. We provide homeowners insurance, flood, rental, commercial, auto, and life insurance. Don't let the unexpected tragedy destroy your family's future. Here at Jones Insurance, 7603 West Bank Expressway, Monroe, Louisiana, 772. Contact Lois at 504-348-1492.
Hi, I'm Sheriff Joe Lapinto, and you are watching the New Orleans Talk Network.
During times of family stress, if you need a church to hold your funeral services or a hall to hold your repast, you can contact us at Bethesda Community Event Center at 504-348-0132. We can accommodate all your repast and funeral needs, from a preacher to perform the services, to an organist that plays the music, the ability to stream it live for those who can't make it, and more. During your time of need, all of your arrangements can be made under one roof here at Bethesda Community Event Center. We're here to serve you. Give us a call when you're in need at 504-348-0132. Give your loved one a great homegoing event. Come second line at our center.
This is Congressman Cedric Richmond, and you're watching the New Orleans Talk Network.
Step Construction is here for you with a brand new offer. We now provide affordable storage sheds. Stop wasting your money on overpriced storage units and portable containers. Step Construction can provide you with a custom shed that will fit your budget and storage needs. So contact Step Construction today at 504-340-5809 for your own personal quote. Let us help you take the next step at Step Construction.
Are you looking for a home to live stream your next event? Give us a call here at Bethesda Community Event Center, the only place on the Gulf Coast that can host and broadcast live your wedding reception, your baby shower, business seminar, and any other special event. Give us a call at 504-708-9454 for more details.
It's your girl Spice Divas, the marketing diva, the host of Red Lip Talk podcast. Check me out every Monday at 1 p.m. on New Orleans Talk Network. Where do I begin? We have so many amazing guests, from politicians, gospel artists, barbers, beauticians, entrepreneurs, and so much more. If you want to be a guest on our podcast, definitely tune in so you can see what we're doing every Monday at 1 p.m. on New Orleans Talk Network. Mwah!
Still dealing with hurricane damage on your roof or damages to your home in general? Call Step Construction today at 504-340-5809 or visit stepconstruction.com. Step Construction is fully licensed and fully insured. We tell the insurance companies what they owe you.
Welcome to Talk What You Know, Hard Talk Edition. We're live here today in the New Orleans Talk Network studios. Thank you for allowing us to be here on Talk What You Know, Hard Talk Edition, where we allow you to become the expert. You help us define what's real and what's not. You help us come up with the answers, the results. You know, 80% of the people can tell you what's wrong, but only 20% of the people spend time trying to figure out how to solve it. Here on Talk What You Know, Hard Talk Edition, we bring people on, average day-to-day people, who probably have solutions that most people don't think about because it impacts them on a daily basis. You know, we've been talking about economics and the black collar, and we're going to get back to that because that's very important. Let me just say, you know what, I was thinking this morning as we're preparing for the show, I think I'm going to limit the amount of time that I spent on this rabbit hole, Alice in Wonderland crap that's going on in the country today. After today, I'm going to go back focusing on the things that really impact people on a day-to-day basis. And because sometimes we can chase that rabbit down that hole, and the farther we go down that silo, things become weirder and weirder, and things start to reinforce themselves. We got serious economic issues that we need to deal with from a group economic perspective. I think we're going to go back to that. But today, since we prepared this, we're going to go forward with it. We're going to talk about freedom of the press. And is freedom of the press in America a myth or reality? Now, the Constitution says, and it's very, very clear, the First Amendment, Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech or of the press. Now, when that was written in the Constitution, it solidified those two tenets. But something happened that I think oftentimes we forget. And I think that puts us in a paradox that we're in today. And sometimes you have to go back in history and look back retrospectively to get an idea. John Adams passed something called the Sedition Act of 1798. Now, Congress passed it, and its full use and implementation probably violated every aspect of the First Amendment. What Adams did is because he didn't like the fact that a substantial amount of newspapers and journalists and pamphlets and people were against him. When he and Jefferson ran, he got Congress, which he controlled at that time, the House and the Senate, to pass the Sedition Act. And they spent all their time arresting journalists, arresting enemies, arresting people that they thought were just not in concert with their agenda. And they used a legitimate act of Congress to do it. And I guess we can go back and look at our history, and that sort of abridged freedom of the speech and freedom of the press. That set the paradigm. And throughout the next 150 years, you've seen a tremendous war waged, whether or not people have the right to say and speak their mind. And I think that sort of brings us to where we are today. You see, if you look back at history, it'll show us. You know what? I used to love to watch Bill Buckley, staunch conservative. But Bill Buckley would bring people on to debate economic and social issues, and they had open debate, man. If you go back and look at some of the Buckley interviews, Buckley was a staunch conservative, but he brought liberals on the show to discuss issues, and they went back and forth. Buckley brought Malcolm X. He debated Malcolm X. Yes. He debated many people at that time. And what's wrong with debate? What's wrong with people being free to say what's on their mind as long as it doesn't hurt anyone in the process or incite anything to hurt anyone in the process? There's something going on today that turns its head on conservatism. And I want you to see that this is not something that people didn't see coming. People didn't prognosticate it. See, when you prognosticate something, you take all the facts, you pull them together, you predict, well, this may happen if this occurs. It's called a prognostication. Weathermen do it all the time. Forecasters do it all the time. They prognosticate the possibility based on empirical data. Let's look at a clip. I want you to see it, and I want you to see what he says. And he starts to prognosticate. This is Mr. Conservative. You can't get more conservative than this individual. Now, he's not with us today, but he left a legacy, a warning for us. And I want us to take a look at it, look at what he says, and that's going to bring us from Adams to then to now. Let's see this clip from Barry Goldwater talking with William F. Buckley almost 40 years ago.
We have put so much power in the office. And I wouldn't be so concerned about whether he could use these powers to perpetuate himself in office, but how he would use these powers to destroy people that disagreed with him, to pile up voters where voters don't usually pile up. I think Johnson is fully aware of the powers that he has, and he certainly has used them and will use them. There's many ways that the average person doesn't understand. For example, let's take mergers. It's becoming obvious that large businesses in some areas have to get together. Now, who has the control on this? The president, in a subtle, indirect way through the Attorney General and the Bureau affected, so that powerful businessmen have to become beholden to the president in order to see that their business is put in a position where they can compete. And this is becoming more and more a problem, frankly, with the conservative movement, is the fact that businessmen are being intimidated by the president and are moving away from historic positions, that we have put so much power in the office of the presidency that someday the wrong man...
That's profound. That's revealing. That's a prognostication. And the irony of it, if you look at it, Goldwater at that time was talking about Lyndon Johnson and the potential use of presidential powers to impact mergers, to regulate TV, to regulate speech. I mean, it's an in-depth conversation. And Barry Goldwater, Mr. Conservative, lays it out. And he shows us that what could happen if freedom of the press is abridged by the Sedition Act, and then someone now comes along. You know, the only thing that still maintains the freedom of the press in this country is the Supreme Court ruled in Sullivan versus New York Times, dealt with malice and malintent, and Bergenberg versus Ohio dealt with threats of violence. Those are the cornerstones. Those are the only things that's holding that First Amendment together. And we know in contemporary times, norms and even Supreme Court decisions don't matter. Ask yourself this question. The law nor the Constitution describes hate speech. The Constitution doesn't describe hate speech, nor does the law. I want you to take a look at a clip that I think you'll find interesting. Let's hold that one, Mike, for right now. Let's go to the Daily Show one first. Let's hold that one. Yes, I want you to see something. I want you to see, this is fascinating. And the irony of it and the perplexity of it. Let's run this clip. Let's just run this clip.
Even before this Jason Kringle situation at ABC, there were plenty of other people in America exercising their free speech incorrectly. So here's some examples of things you cannot say about your political opponents.
You can't call someone who you disagree with a fascist.
Leaders cannot call their political opponents Nazis and fascists and enemies of the state.
How horrible and dangerous it is to view people with whom we disagree as somehow being less than human.
Thank you. You can't say fascist. You can't say enemy of the state. You can't say less than human. These are simple rules that any responsible member of a society can easily follow.
The Democrats, they're fascists. Joe Biden, he's an enemy of the state. It's a very demonic party. Nancy Pelosi said, please don't call them animals, they're human beings. I said, no, they're animals. Of course, I think she's an animal too, you want to know the truth.
Technically correct. She's not a mineral.
There's in comedy, there's reality. I mean, that couldn't be put better than that. I couldn't articulate better than that. You see, everything is relative. Hate speech is nowhere in the law, nowhere in the Constitution. People should be free to express themselves. People should be free to address issues. And I want you to see the man in power determines a lot, regardless of what you believe. And when you see one apostasy in religion, you see no moral codes, no moralism is relative. And when you see leaders that don't abide by any norms, because what makes it's not just the law, it's always the intent of the law. See, the Sedition Act was designed to deal with people who were trying to undermine the United States. But they took a law, and they knew what the law, they knew their purpose for writing the law, but they color-coded it in such a way that it allowed for Adams to do exactly some of the things that Goldwater said no to. Now, I want you to see something and pay attention to this. Watch this clip, and you're going to see what Goldwater was talking about. That's amazing. That's from Richard Nixon. He declared the press the enemy, professors the enemy, and he told them to just make sure they understood it, write 100 times on a blackboard. That's the mindset. Now the question for you and I, do we have freedom of the press, and do we have freedom of speech, and how can it be regulated, and should it be regulated? Because what's happening is that one of the cornerstones of democracy is freedom of the press. One of the cornerstones of democracy is freedom for the people. You see, the law is not designed to protect the government from the people. It's to protect the people from the government. When you start to censor, when you start to determine what is hate speech, when you start to determine what people can say and cannot say, that's an abridgment that goes beyond the intent of the First Amendment. And the question for you and I, are we just sitting around silent, not dealing with it? How are we looking at it? How is it going to impact us? You see, it's not impacting you today because your child, your grandmother, your auntie, your cousin, nobody's officially suppressing their speech. But what happens when they come for you? What happens when you say something that's inconsistent with the government's policy? What happens? Now, Mike, before we take a break, let's go to this clip because this is key. How you handle, I want you to see how LBJ handled freedom of the press. Now, LBJ was like a tough dude, man. He's one of the toughest presidents. In the absence of Vietnam, one of the most acclaimed presidents in the history of the United States. But I want you to see what this clip and get an idea that when the person who is the leader of all the people, although he's attacked, although he's abused, You can't use the FCC. You can't use the IRS. You can't use the post office. You can't use the U.S. Attorney's Office. You can't, you shouldn't turn these things on the American people. I want you to see how LBJ handled criticism. I want you to see how LBJ dealt with, you can't say anything worse than this about a person. Let's watch this clip.
American tradition that can't be denied. Not even here in front of the White House. Citizens are free to make their voices heard within earshot of the Oval Office.
To demand that our president
We saw protests all the time. And it's not just anti-war protests, but it's many different kinds of protests of people calling on the president to do something.
And if you come to Washington, you can get as close to our executive mansion and as just about any other country in the world. It is an accessible place. Some would argue too accessible.
The White House has always been a magnet for protesters. But no one was ready for the scale of the demonstrations protesting the Vietnam War.
We know that most people's intentions are good. We don't question their motives. We've never said they're unpatriotic, although they say some pretty ugly things about us. We believe very strongly in preserving the right to differ in this country and the right to dissent. And if I have done a good job of anything since I've been president, is to ensure that there are plenty of dissenters.
Even behind the walls of the White House, the president could not ignore the outcry against a war many believed was unjust.
They would exercise their rights to protest, and they did stand right outside our window across in Lafayette Square and say some things that were very hurtful.
As the war dragged on, so did the protests. Late at night, President Johnson would retreat to the Situation Room, a secure command center in the basement of the West Wing. There, he would wait for the teletype machines to print reports from the battlefield half a world away, including the latest body counts.
He had two sons-in-law who were in Vietnam during the height of his presidency when he was waging a war in that country. It was very, very personal for LBJ.
As a White House correspondent, and not I alone, frequently think what it must have been like to pull back the curtains, look out, see on the street, hear people shouting, see the signs.
And as he sees protesters across the street and he's looking out at these signs, hey, hey, LBJ, how many kids did you kill?
That's phenomenal. Now, anybody know the history of that? It's just, I studied it and it's just phenomenal. Hey, hey, LBJ, who are you going to kill today? Now, Johnson took that personal. You talk to his aides, it bothered him, perplexed him. He couldn't understand, couldn't appreciate it. But you heard what he said. They call us unpatriotic, but we don't. They have the right to differ. And I'm one of the catalysts that allows them to differ. That's protecting, that's understanding freedom of the press. Freedom to protest legally, lawfully. That's so key, that's so important. Because what happens is that when that freedom is abridged, democracy crumbles. You may not believe it, but if you look at Russia, Turkey, different authoritarian regimes throughout the world, you'll find one of the first things they do is eliminate free speech, eliminate freedom of the press. That's their protocol. Once you eliminate freedom of the press, once you eliminate free speech, you have no opposition. We're going to dig deeper into this, and when we come back off this break, and we're going to look at is freedom of the press and freedom of speech a reality in the United States since the Sedition Act, or are we fooling ourselves? We'll be right back on Talk What You Know, Hard Talk Edition, after this short break.
Now New Orleans has a choice. Download the New Orleans Talk Network app for your mobile device or listen at www.neworleanstalknetwork.com.
Are you looking for a hall to live stream your next event? Give us a call here at Bethesda Community Event Center, the only place on the Gulf Coast that can host and broadcast live your wedding reception, your baby shower, business seminar, and any other special event. Give us a call at 504-708-9454 for more details.
Bethesda House of Prayer. Bethesda is a church for non-traditional worshipers, a church designed for those who love God's Word. Would you like to attend a church where believers and non-believers can choose to worship together? A church where cultural differences does not get in the way of God's message. We invite you to be our special guest. Our services begin 9 a.m. on Sunday, located at 7601 West Bank Expressway, Suite B, Marrero, Louisiana. For more information, contact us at 504-348-0132.
The laws of society were made for both you and me. Because of my color, I struggle to be free. Sticks and stones, they break my bones, burden me.
Welcome back to Talk What You Know, Hard Talk Edition. We're here with no holds bar. We talk about issues that impact you. We talk to the man on the street. You know, the street knows things that are going on before the institution. Do you know that? The street knows what's happening before the institution. The institutions only report what the street already knows. That's why here on Talk What You Know, Hard Talk Edition, we go to the street. We go to the barbershop, the beautician shop, the man under the tree. Yes, the mechanic working under the car. We go where the people congregate. We go where the people talk. Because if you want to know what's going on, go on the street. The street knows it first. And the street knows about what's happening here in the United States today. The street knows about Jimmy Kimmel. You know, I was talking to a guy on the street the other day. He said, man, didn't they cancel that guy, Bill Maher, politically incorrect? I said, what did you say? Something I had forgotten all about. He said, Bill Maher, that guy that come on HBO. He used to have this show called Politically Incorrect. I said, you know, I do remember that. He said, you know, they canceled his show because he said something to the effect that the United States shooting cruise missiles 2,000 miles away, and these people were courageous. They decided to attack the Twin Towers head on, something not like that. Bill Maher cracked a joke about it. Do you know that Ori Fletcher, the press secretary, put pressure on ABC to cancel that show? Yes, canceled that show. And as God would have it, Bill Maher ended up even having a better show. Shows on HBO now. Sometimes I watch it. I like the humor. I like the news that he brings. And it's just interesting that we always think there's freedom of the press here in the United States. There was a time when William Randolph Hearst controlled all the newspapers. And they printed pretty much the narrative that they wanted you to know. The Hearst Empire controlled a significant amount. You remember that movie Citizens Kane, made by Orson Welles? That movie was based upon William Randolph Hearst. And they manipulated the Spanish-American War. I mean, they manipulated so much stuff. So this is my question. Is freedom of the press a reality since the Sedition Act was passed? And as far as I know, the Sedition Act of 1798 has never been repealed. So that's a law on the books that could be used. And Adams was vicious with it. If somebody said something, criticized the government, they arrested them, they put them in jail. Now, you don't think that's real, and you don't think it can happen here in the United States, but it can. And it does. Look at the pressure that was put on ABC to cancel the Jimmy Kimmel show. Nobody can doubt that FCC chairman Brandon Carr played a role in that, because he considered what Kimball said hate speech. Now, where does the Constitution or the law define hate speech? It only defines free speech. As a matter of fact, the U.S. Attorney General, Pam Bondi, said there's free speech and there's hate speech. How do you define hate speech? We showed you a clip earlier. So is it selective? Is it predicated on something particular? Let's look what Brandon Carr said. Probably, you know what? Let me just pull it up here so I can give you exactly what he said. Okay, look at this. A newsroom decision about what stories to cover and how to frame them should be beyond the reach of any government official. That's Brandon Carr. That's the person who came on the Benny Show podcast and said we can either do this the easy way or we can do it the hard way. That sounds like Tony Persano in what's the name of that show, Mike? The Sopranos. That sounds something like Tony Soprano will say. That's something like the Godfather would say. Here's the FCC chairman saying that we can do it the easy way, the hard way. But this is what he said in February of 2022. A newsroom decisions about what stories to cover and how to frame them should be beyond the use of any government official. Now, let's just look at a couple of things that he said then and says now. Watch this. He said this in May of 22. President Biden is right. Political satire is one of the oldest and most important forms of free speech. It challenges those in power while using humor to draw more people into the discussion. That's what he said. That's why people in influential positions have always targeted for censorship. This is what this man said in 2022. But yet in 2025, he's going to say that maybe some of the local stations' licenses should be pulled. He's interfering with mergers. He's put pressure on ABC. Let's look at another quote from him. This quote in 2009. Should the government censor speech it doesn't like? Of course not. Should the government censor speech it does? Of course not. The FCC does not have a roving mandate to police speech in the nature of public interest. That's phenomenal. On a Benny show, he said they do have the right to do that. Yes. He said because of recent electoral changes, they have the right to do that. Let's look at another one of his quotes. Should the government censor speech it doesn't like? Of course not. The FCC doesn't have that mandate. Look at this one, he said, in December of 23. It's amazing. It's amazing. It's just fundamentally goes against, I guess, the old adage, power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Look what he said. Free speech is the counterweight, is the check on government control. That is why censorship is the authoritarian's dream. Oh, man. Free speech is the counterweight. Boy, when you're not in power, you want free speech. It's the check of government control. This is 23. This is 23. And he goes on to say, that is why censorship is the authoritarian's dream. Now, how can you say, after those statements, how can you go on a Benny show, and I don't know if we have that clip or not, but I hope we do, on the Benny show, and say that you're going to use all the power and authority of the FCC to regulate hate speech? You're now defining hate speech. One person's fascist is another person's friend. We saw that clip earlier. And what I'm suggesting to you is that if you're not seeing this, if your eyes is not open to this, then what's going to happen is that one day you're going to wake up and you're not going to be able to say what's on your heart, what's on your mind, because New York versus Sullivan is not going to protect you. Because the Supreme Court is like, whatever's in vogue, that's how we're going to vote. 18 of the last cases that have gone before the Supreme Court that has some bearing on what a president of the United States could do. Do you know they have sided with the president 15 times? Yes. 15 out of 18. So if you're looking for the Supreme Court to protect you, hey man, you need to reconsider it. The only thing that's going to protect you is you. You see the pressure that the public put on ABC? We're going to cancel your subscriptions, boycotting ABC. That's your tool. Because nobody's coming to rescue you but you. Nobody's going to save you but you. And if you're sitting around, not understanding what's going on, and not realizing that freedom of the press is not a guardrail, freedom of the press since the Sedition Act of 1798 is not guaranteed, then you're in trouble. Let me just show you for yourself. I want you to see this clip from the Benny Show. That's going to give you a better idea that is freedom of the press in America, is freedom of speech in America a reality, or is something that can be changed by the whim of someone who redefines hate speech? Listen to Brandon Carr on the Benny Show, and this will give you a good perspective.
There's a very concerted effort to try to lie to the American people about the nature, as you indicate, of one of the most significant, newsworthy public interest acts that we've seen in a long time. And what appears to be an action by Jimmy Kimmel to play into that narrative that this was somehow a MAGA or Republican motivated person. If that's what happened here with his conduct, that is really, really sick. And I've been very clear. They have a license granted by us at the FCC, and that comes with it an obligation to operate in the public interest. And we can get into some ways that we've been trying to reinvigorate the public interest and some changes that we've seen. But frankly, when you see stuff like this, I mean, look, we can do this the easy way or the hard way. These companies can find ways to change conduct, to take action, frankly, on Kimmel, or, there's going to be additional work for the FCC ahead. Obviously, look, there's calls for Kimmel to be fired. I think, you could certainly see a path forward for suspension over this. And again, the FCC is going to have remedies that we could look at. And again, we may ultimately be called to be a judge on that. But yes, this also strikes me as sort of conduct that to some extent shows some sort of desperate irrelevance. I mean, look,
anybody cannot This man out of his own mouth says some action has to be happen. It could be suspension or it could be something. Here's the chairman of the FCC going on a show and saying that a comedian is not in the public interest because he is demonstrating hate speech. Come on, man. Come on. You're using all of the power of the FCC to challenge local broadcasters, to challenge their parents' companies, to say, if you don't do what we want you to do, if you don't say what we want you to say, then we're going to classify it as hate speech. We're going to classify it as not being in the public interest, and we're going to demand actions. You heard Barry Goldwater say earlier, you have mergers that could be impacted. You have licenses that can be impacted. Now, there's a tremendous amount of authority invested in these organizations. When the chairman of the FCC comes out and recommend to a company that has potential mergers pending, and ABC has some potential mergers pending. When the chairman of the FCC comes out and says, you got to take an action, you know what that corporation is going to do? They're going to take an action. They're going to do what they need to do to protect their bottom line, and that's profit. And the only way you can impact the bottom line is what you've done the last 2 weeks. You've sent a clear signal that I believe in freedom of the press. I may not agree with what you say. I may not agree with how you say it, but you have the right to say it. I may not agree with what you broadcast. I may not agree with what you print, your editorials, but you have a right to say it. That is a cornerstone. And in the absence of Adams passing the Sedition Act, we wouldn't be in the place that we are today. And the only two things that are protecting us from it is those two Supreme Court decisions. And you know from recent history that this Supreme Court does not believe in precedents. They rule according to contemporary or political desires in the moment. Anybody who doubts that, they're fooling themselves. And it's just interesting to me how we can sit around and invest so much power. They should be calling for this man to resign. There should be pressure from the public. There should be pressure from the politicians and business people, because the next time they're going to come after you. But you remember we talked about William Hurst? We have William Hurst today. I want to show you this clip. I hope Mike have it. The owner of Mega, Facebook. I want you to look at something he said at a meeting. They called the meeting at the White House of all the high-tech people. All of them were there, and and that's a good thing. Let me just stop. It's always good for the president, whomever he is, to invite business people in, to hear their thoughts, to let them hear his thoughts, and help form policies that are good for the American people. But when you have one of the richest people in the country, a person that controls a significant amount of the social media that you and I on every day, and thank God that the social media is not regulated by the FCC. They can't pull me off of Facebook or YouTube or Twitter or Instagram. I thank God has leveled the playing field, that now the little boy in the hut can broadcast his opinion.
Not yet, anyway.
Not yet, that's right. Producer Mike said, not yet. But I want you to look at this clip of the president of Facebook kowtowing. Watch this. Watch this clip.
How much are you spending, would you say, over the next few years?
Oh, gosh. I think it's probably going to be something like, I don't know, at least $600 billion through 28 in the U.S. Yeah.
It's a lot.
No, it's significant.
That's a lot. Thank you, Mark. It's great to have you.
Sorry, I wasn't ready to do our for announcement. He said I wasn't sure what number you wanted to go with.
Did you hear that? Was that a good enough number? Was that a big enough number? My God. Here's a guy that controls one of the most significant social media apparatuses in the United States. He isn't really speaking his mind. He's kowtowing. He's asking a question, Mark Zuckerberg. What's his name, Mike? Mark Zuckerberg. He's kowtowing. Did I say enough? Did I say I'm gonna invest enough in the United States? Damn. You know how many people are on Facebook? You know how many people are on that platform worldwide? Now you have to ask yourself this question. If he's going to kowtow like that at an open dinner at the White House, all those other texts were there, and an open mic happens to catch him, and he's kowtowing there, what is he telling his programmers and his analysts to do with his algorithms? You ever notice lately how Facebook is changing as it relates to free press and free coverage? Have you ever noticed how those algorithms are now starting to change what you see and what you can say? Yes. That's some of the beginning of the erosion of free press. Mark, what is his name, Mike?
Zuckerberg.
Mark Zuckerberg. Kowtowing, man. Is that enough, Mr. President? Did I say enough? Do you want me to go back and get the algorithms to change this and change that? Man, what's going on? When we come back, I want you to see real journalism. I want you to see people who stand up on the side of right, regardless of the consequences. And we're going to look at that when we come back, how real journalists act, how real business people act. We'll be right back on Talk What You Know, Hard Talk Edition, where we hold no bars. We talk to the man in the street, because the man in the street knows what's going on. And we'll be right back after this short commercial break.
It's like a jungle sometimes. It makes me wonder how I keep from going under. Standing on the front stoop, hanging out the window, watching all the cars go by, roaring as the breeze is blown. A crazy lady living in a bag, eating out of garbage pails, used to be a fag hag, such a that's the tango.
The New Orleans Talk Network, now on your mobile device, on your computer, in your ear, and interactive. It's new, it's innovative, and it's on your mobile device. Android, iPhone, iPad, and on your computer. Take us wherever you go. Because we're interactive. 504-341-TALK. That's 504-341-8255.
Here at Jones Insurance, your full-service agency, let us take care of all your insurance needs. We provide homeowners insurance, flood, rental, commercial, auto, and life insurance. Don't let the unexpected tragedy destroy your family's future. Here at Jones Insurance, 7603 West Bank Expressway, Monroe, Louisiana, 772. Contact Lois at 504-348-1492.
It's your girl, Spice Divas, the marketing diva, the host of Red Lip Talk podcast. Check me out every Monday at 1 p.m. on New Orleans Talk Network. Where do I begin? We have so many amazing guests, from politicians, gospel artists, barbers, beauticians, entrepreneurs, and so much more. If you want to be a guest on our podcast, definitely tune in so you can see what we're doing every Monday at 1 p.m. on New Orleans Talk Network. Mwah!
Welcome back to Talk What You Know, the Hard Talk Edition, where we talk to the man in the street, where you become the expert. It's so, you know so much. See, the street knows what's happening before the institution. As a matter of fact, the institution is only reporting what the street already knows. The street already knows something is going on. And they pay attention. Like I told you, I forgot about Bill Maher politically incorrect and ABC canceling him because of a comment he made. And the censorship. A guy on the street said, hey man, I was out talking, hey man, you remember the Richard Pryor show? They didn't like what Richard Pryor was saying. One of the most popular shows on NBC, the FCC put pressure on NBC to cancel Richard Pryor's show was the highest rated show on NBC when it was canceled. But because they disagreed with his political views and the things that he was saying, they canceled that show. And our history is replete with examples that demonstrate that we may not be as free a press, and we may not have the ability to have as much free speech as we think since the Sedition Act of 1798 by John Adams. He put all this in place. Barry Goldwater reminded us in the 1960s what could happen if the wrong people are in the White House, the wrong people are in these regulatory agents like the FCC, the IRS, the U.S. Attorney General's office, who impacts businesses, who impacts whether or not Sinclair and Syntex and Next Game can merge, can come together. Those are affiliates of NBC who's trying to merge. So when FCC chairman say, hey, a good thing would be to suspend Jimmy Kendall, what happens? Jimmy Kendall is suspended. Then what happens? You decide, hey, I may not agree what he said, I may not agree how he said it, but I agree with his right to say it because one day they're gonna want to tell me what I can say. So you start to tell ABC, you know what, ABC? We're gonna cancel our Hulu subscription. We're gonna cancel our ESP subscription. We're gonna stop going to Disney World and Disneyland, and we're gonna boycott ABC. Now, how do you like that? You know what happens? The executives of ABC and all of these people get together and say, you know what? We might be in trouble, man. And what do? They bring Jimmy Kimmel's show back on the air less than a week after terminating. They come up with some lolly-bolly press release that says, oh, we talked to Jimmy and we had good conversations and we just wanted to spend a little time to give everybody a chance to talk and just let things settle down. No, that was not the intent. No, the FCC chairman said that Jimmy Kendall, first Colbert, Jimmy Kendall, and all of them, their goal is to eliminate those late night talk shows that historically, even going back to Johnny Carson, historically has just let the public know what's going on in their government. And they use satire to do it. And there's nothing wrong with that. We've always used satire. Alice in Wonderland was a satire. The Wizard of Oz was a satire. All those were political satires that let the people know what was going on in the countries at that time. So the question for you and me, are we going to just sit back and lose the cornerstone of our freedom, freedom of the press and freedom of speech? Or are we going to start paying attention to this? Because it makes a difference. Freedom of the press makes a difference. Can I just show you why it makes a difference? At one time, you may not believe this, the most powerful person in this country was a senator named Joseph McCarthy. Joseph McCarthy had an enemy list. He had a communist list that shook the foundations of business, broadcasting, journalism, that impacted the entire country. He even had the President of the United States uncomfortable with talking about him and dealing with him. As a matter of fact, the President of the United States at that time did not talk about it. The FBI didn't deal with him. McCarthy was so powerful. But you know what brought McCarthy down? Two things. Freedom of the press and the ability to say what you want to say and not have it abridged by the government. You remember, Mr. McCarthy, at long last, do you have no shame? Do you have no common decency? Leave the lad alone, Mr. McCarthy. Remember that? That's the first thing that started to take McCarthy down. And that was an attorney in a congressional hearing saying to the most powerful man in the country at that time, do you have no decency? Do you have no integrity at long last? And watch this clip that finally clipped its wings. Mike, show that Morrow clip.
Earlier, the senator asked, Upon what meat does this our Caesar feed? Had he looked 3 lines earlier in Shakespeare's Caesar, he would have found this line, which is not altogether inappropriate. The fault, dear Brutus, is not in our stars, but in ourselves. No one familiar with the history of his country can deny that congressional committees are useful. It is necessary to investigate before legislating. But the line between investigating and persecuting is a very fine one, and the junior senator from Wisconsin has stepped over it repeatedly. His primary achievement has been in confusing the public mind as between the internal and the external threats of communism. We must not confuse dissent with disloyalty. We must remember always that accusation is not proof, and that conviction depends upon evidence and due process of law. We will not walk in fear one of another. We will not be driven by fear into an age of unreason if we dig deep in our history and our doctrine, and remember that we are not descended from fearful men, not from men who feared to write, to speak, to associate, and to defend causes that were for the moment unpopular. This is no time for men who oppose Senator McCarthy's methods to keep silent, or for those who approve. We can deny our heritage and our history, but we cannot escape responsibility for the result. There is no way for a citizen of a republic to abdicate his responsibilities. As a nation, we have come into our full inheritance at a tender age. We proclaim ourselves, as indeed we are, the defenders of freedom wherever it continues to exist in the world. But we cannot defend freedom abroad by deserting it at home. The actions of the junior senator from Wisconsin have caused alarm and dismay amongst our allies abroad and given considerable comfort to our enemies. And whose fault is that? Not really his. He didn't create this situation of fear. He merely exploited it, and rather successfully. Cassius was right. The fault, dear Brutus, is not in our stars, but in ourselves.
All right. The fault is not in our stars, but in ourselves. That's F.R. Morrow, taking down the most powerful person in the country. And he established, look, Senate congressional committees have the right to investigate. That's how they legislate, but they don't have right to prosecute. And they don't have a right to silence the opposition. Just like they have a right to talk, the opposition has a right to talk. And he puts it on you and me as American citizens. If we sit back and obfuscate our responsibility, our obligation to speak out for free press, for freedom of speech, and we lose the free press, and we lose the freedom of speech, we have nobody to blame but ourselves. Where are the Morrows today? Who's speaking out? Who's going, Morrow ended up losing his job in the end. But look at the picture that history paints of him and ask yourself, what picture would you want history to paint of you? One of a coward who dies 1,000 times, or a valiant man who only dies once? Freedom of the press, freedom of speech is the cornerstone of our democracy. And as Morrow said, how can we defend it abroad and not be willing to defend it at home? You remember we showed earlier about LBJ, the protest in front of the White House? And LBJ's assistant said that it worried him. He stayed up at nights, but he allowed it to continue. I want you to see another courageous act. I want you to see what I believe and what scholars suggest was significant in curtailing the Vietnam War after constant protests. And this protest wasn't shut down. People were allowed to protest, and nonviolent protests. They were allowed to impact the government. And I want you to illustrate even more the significance of a free press. Because had not Walter Cronkite looked at what was going on and changed his position and come out as the leading journalist of his day and said we need to have peace. We need to end the war in Vietnam. That war would have more than likely continue. Watch this piece for yourself.
For it seems now more certain than ever that the bloody experience of Vietnam is to end in a stalemate. But it is increasingly clear to this reporter that the only rational way out then will be to negotiate, not as victors, but as an honorable people who lived up to their pledge to defend democracy and did the best they could.
That was 60 years ago, 60 plus years ago. Here's the most significant journalist of his day saying, after looking at all this, after looking at history, after looking at what's going on, the only sensible thing to do is negotiate an honorable peace based upon we tried to establish democracy in Vietnam, and we went there with all the best intentions, and we've done our best, and it's time for us to negotiate a peace and withdraw. Do you know what happened after that speech? You know what Lyndon Johnson realized? That none of his advisors would tell him that you've lost the American people, and more importantly, Mr. President, someone and people have always been with you, the press, because they believed in you, they believed in what you were doing. You have lost the press. That's a legacy that you want to have. That's a legacy that I want to have. To be able to say, during these turbulent times, during times of uncertainty, during times when Adam set this process in place, and the Supreme Court of the United States, that Supreme Court, not the one today, the Supreme Court of the United States put a halt on it. In those landmark decisions, Sullivan versus the New York Times, and the other one we quoted earlier. What if the Supreme Court of today doesn't agree that there's no such thing as hate speech, there's only free speech? What does that do to you? What does it do to me? And more importantly, what does it do to your children? What does it do to your grandchildren? What does it do to your legacy? The cornerstone of democracy is freedom of the press. People envy it all over the world. And here's at stake. And the question is, what are you and I going to do about it? How are we going to do it? Look, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, I mean, they call it the War Department now. It was the Department of Defense. It's the War Department now. This cat comes out, Pete Hesick, I think his name is. A lot of this stuff, man, I've been in tune with. I'm not in tune with. I'm getting back in the groove with it. I've been talking to the man on the street. He comes out and says this. On September the 18th, the U.S. Department required journalists to sign a pledge that they would not publish information, even unclassified, from the Pentagon unless approved by a designated authority. That sounds like something between 1929 and 1930, man. That's something that centers around something we don't like to talk about. We don't like to talk today because of some of the stuff that was happening in 1929, between 1928 and 1931 in Germany. Censorship of the press, control of the educational institutions, complete control of the apparatus of government. Now, you can sit back and say history doesn't repeat itself. You can sit back and say, oh, I got freedom of the press, and this decision don't matter, and that decision doesn't matter. But the first thing Hitler did was eliminate freedom of the press. The first thing Stalin did was start to censor all dissidents. In modern times, that's happened in Turkey. That's happened in China. That happened in Russia. you can't say it can't happen here. Because you know what? People in those countries said it couldn't happen. And you know what? It happened. And so we can't redefine free speech and make hate speech and free speech the same thing. No. We have to look at it for what it is. We have to look at the Constitution and say the Constitution guarantees the right of free speech. The Constitution guarantees the right of a free press. And regardless of it hasn't been totally free, it's the best damn free press, best damn freedom of speech that's anywhere else in the world. And people over the centuries have tried to abridge it, try to destroy it, try to take it away. And every now and then, a group of courageous Americans, and I say Americans, because Morrow was an American, Cronkite was an American, and you are an American. And the question is, are we going to sit back and allow it to be taken away from us? You know, the people in Adams' time didn't do it. You know what? Scholars say Adams probably lost that election because of that. LBJ endured it. Nixon hated the press, but the press ended up exposing him. Freedom of the press, it's not about protecting no newspaper. It's about protecting the people. Because as citizens, we have to be allowed the right to criticize business people, ecclesiastical people, even the clergy. We have to be able to hold them accountable, because without accountability, democracy is nothing but a slogan. Without accountability, without protecting the First Amendment that protects the right of every citizen, every protester, every journalist to say what they want to say, as long as it doesn't incite danger, or long as it does not include malice, you have the right to say it. And the press, nor you nor me, can be silent, because when that happens, we lose our democracy, and our grandchildren and our children will ask us, what did you do when they were taking it away from us? And if you say nothing and you do nothing, you know what's going to happen? See all those presidents that were flashed across the screen? All those people, except for Adams, believed in freedom of the press. They didn't put Johnson up there, but he did believe in freedom of the press and freedom of speech. And the question for you and I today is, what do you believe in? What are you willing to do? What are you willing to give up to help save freedom of the press, freedom of speech, which is the cornerstone of our democracy and is embedded in the Constitution, and only you can allow people to rip it out. This has been Talk What You Know, Hard Talk Edition, where we deal with facts, no holds barred. We talk to the man in the street, and we call it as we see it. Look forward to being with you next time on Hard Talk. Talk What You Know, right here in the New Orleans Talk Studios.
But that's no reason to hold me back.
Doing? It's your girl Spice Divas, the marketing diva, and we have New Orleans Talk Network proudly presents the Red Lip Talk Literacy Expo. It's building community engagement through literacy and author exposure. This event gives local authors the platform that they deserve to shine. Join us at Bethesda Community Event Center, the hub of cultural and literacy growth. We want you to save those dates. There's 3 dates, so we want you to mark your calendars. September the 28th at 4 p.m. October the 26th at at 2 p.m. and December the 14th at 2 p.m. We don't want y'all to miss it. Don't miss inspiring stories, networking, community fun, and vendors. You guys are welcome. Come celebrate with us, literacy, culture, connection with us at New Orleans Talk Network proudly presents the Red Lip Talk Literacy Expo. Mwah.